Hey guys, welcome back to Fully Spooled. Last episode we got the engine finally installed, solidly in place, so this episode we're going to go through and build out the rest of the engine from the water pump to the alternator, the front accessories, the intake, everything. I've had the valley cover off now for about 5 months and it's gotten a lot of dirt in there. So I'm going to go through, clean all the dirt out, and then put a new knock sensor in, and then the gasket, the valley cover, and then the intake manifold. And I can finally remove this tape that I've had on here for about 4 years. Alright, that's pretty clean. So this is the original knock sensor that was in the front part of the engine. It's in really good shape, so I'm going to reuse that one. And then I have a brand new one for the rear. Been so long that I've had this off that actually I forgot that these go on top of the valley cover. So it'll go like this. And these pop down inside. And now for the fun part of getting 4-year-old tape off of this without dropping any of the tape into the intake slots. That's going to be a fun challenge. Alright, cool. Now we have all the heads cleaned up so I can go ahead and put the intake on. So I went with the LS2 intake manifold here, and because when I bought this about 3 years ago, it was the same price as a used LS1 intake manifold, but it flows better than an LS1 manifold. So I went with this guy. I don't remember the price offhand, but it came with the manifold as well as the factory LS2 fuel injectors and the fuel rail. So it was a really good deal. I am right now, because of cost reasons, using a factory truck throttle body, which means I have to really clean the crap out of this thing. It is covered in carbon, but the early truck body had 3 bolts up here, and the car manifolds used 4 bolts. So I got this little adapter plate, and I got to find my gasket for that, wherever that might be. So now eventually I'll upgrade this to a bigger, aftermarket throttle body, which will have 4 holes, and I won't have to use this adapter anymore. But yeah, overall, pretty good deal. So I'm going to get this guy bolted up here in a minute. So much built up carbon. This engine only has 40,000 miles on it. It's kind of amazing how much carbon is built up in this. Alright, well, it's not perfect, but it is at least going to be clean enough to get it in the car, and I'm not going to be worried about the car not running properly or something because this thing is just so filthy. So, pretty good. So the reason I had to replace this back knock sensor is because from the factory, they don't seal these gaskets at all. It's just literally just goes in like this, and then that's how they sit under the intake manifold. Well, the problem is water can get in here, drip down inside here and then rust out all the metal in there. So actually the factory tells you to build a sort of like cover or dam out of RTV around the tops of each of these gaskets. So I'm going to take my RTV here and just put a nice bead around this whole piece right here on both sides here, and just kind of flatten it out so it gets nice and dry and makes a watertight seal. Alright, so I let the RTV cure overnight, so now I can put the intake back on and then get back to the rest of the engine build. I even found the bolts in the first try. Due to differences between the F-body water pump, which is what this is, and the truck water pump, which is what this crank and what my accessories are designed to fit, the F-body water pump fits closer to the block, so it won't work with my truck accessories. So I have these water pump spacers that I'm going to use to push this out by about an inch or so, so all of my belts will line up with the water pump pulley. Alright, let's see how to get this thing installed. Alright, I think this actually goes just to the water pump, and this is my new kit, so I might ignore these parts for now and stick with these guys. There's the old thermostat. It looks like it's actually in really good shape still, so I can reuse that. You know, before I put this guy in here, I'm actually going to do more research to make sure that I can use the truck thermostat and this housing on this pump. But in the meantime, I can go ahead and get the spacers installed here with their gaskets and everything separately, and then get this on the engine and then worry about the thermostat later on. From what I can tell, this looks pretty straightforward. You just pop one gasket on like this, put the spacer on like that, the other gasket in here, and then bolt it up to the engine. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. One cool thing about these spacers is that they actually come with a hole here that's been already tapped for a steam vent. Super handy. Or if you don't want to use that, it also comes with like a little block off as well. But I'm probably going to end up using this because I have it, so why not use it, right? So it looks to me like I need to have this spacer on this side because this is where the steam vent goes, and every picture I've seen so far doing research shows the steam pipe here coming out of there and into the vent on this side of the pump, because that's apparently which side needs. I'm sure there's more science to it, but I'm just going to follow what everyone else is doing and put it on this side, and then I'll have my other spacer on this side just like that. That was tricky, but I got it. My neighbor's been weed whacking his lawn for like 7 hours. This is just the most annoyingly loud day I think I've had in my life. So as we can see here, the water pump spacers bring the water pump about an inch out from the block, so the belt that would go around this part of the crank now fits perfectly around the pulley. And finally, we can bring our intake manifold back. And hopefully everything fits correctly. Well, that's super close, so I'm just going to take all this off right now and then just chop this pipe down so I can have access to just this piece down here. So I can fit a hose on that'll go up here and then down and around to the steam fitting on the other side of the pump. Alright, and finally, intake manifold. Alright, we got the car intake installed and torqued down, the F-body water pump installed and torqued down. Everything is lined up, so next we got to figure out the power steering and the alternator situation. Now the factory truck accessories had the alternator about up here, which would have been through the hood if I had tried, to close the hood. So I had to go with a different accessory bracket. And there are a few ways to do this. You can buy a like F-body or a Corvette accessory bracket, but those are all in the $400 to $500 to $600 range, which is no good for me. So I went with a third option, which is just getting a an aftermarket bracket. And this will fit pretty much just like this and will allow me to mount the alternator down lower and the power steering pulley right here. And the reason why I went with this particular bracket is that this is designed with a turbo kit in mind. So later on down the road, when I actually have the money to build a turbo kit for this car, I can just keep the same bracket I have here for that. Now, most of these kits will put the alternator down here underneath, I'm not even sure if you can see, but down basically near where the steering box is, which is no good if you're trying to do a turbo kit. So the nice thing is this cuts in like this, mounts the alternator here, so you can fit the turbo or the exhaust pipes from the manifolds through here to a front-mounted turbo. So these are the directions that come with this kit, and again, I bought this kit about 4 years ago. I'm actually surprised I even found these instructions, but they are not very elaborate. In fact, it even says, I'm working on better instructions, so for now just call me and I'll answer your question. So I'm going to just kind of give this a shot and hopefully I found all the parts I need. I just got started with this process and I already can't find a bunch of bolts for this because I bought this so long ago, but I did at least find some of the original bolts that went here that I can use until I find the other bolts or whatever, order new ones I guess. But so this piece goes here, and this is the back plate where the alternator mounts to up here. So this kit requires using a new power steering pump, which actually is an old power steering pump. This is a power steering pump out of an 88 to 89 Chevy pickup truck. And the reason why they use this is it's smaller and it goes straight up and fits right about here, whereas the one that came with this engine is a bit bigger and kind of cocks up at an angle and gets in the way of everything. But it is the same type of pump, and GM's been using the same kind of pump in their trucks for forever. I think it's called a Saginaw pump. So here is the new pump versus the stock pump, and you can see the difference in shape there. So the instructions say that I need to, I think, remove this and put in a new bolt or something. Let me see what it says. There's a new stud that goes in the back of the pump with the thin nut. This is the new stud, it looks like. So I'm assuming I have to remove this stud and replace it. Alright, I got it off with the torque wrench here. This goes here. Well, I'm not quite sure if this is right, but I found this longer bolt that has a spacer on it and a washer here. So this must go in here, looking at the directions. So if that's the case, I can pull this bolt out, drop everything on the ground, and pop this back in again. And hopefully that means that this is where my idler pulley goes. Then the last step would be to put the alternator in place here. And it looks like this is a little bit widened out there for some reason, so I gotta figure out what's going on there. There we go. That's what I was hoping for. Okay. Alright, we have our alternator installed, our power steering pump is installed, our idler pulley, and then I'm just really happy that this bracket ended up working and that I found all the hardware for it. So yeah, the next thing I gotta do is just take this cap off and put the new one on, which is just a pretty simple Dorman situation. Just like this. Very, very straightforward. So from this angle you can see how low the alternator is compared to where it was on the truck engine, which was like way up here. So there's tons of room on the side here for it, and it clears the hood with plenty of room to spare. And because of the way this bracket's designed, there's tons of room down here when I decide to do the turbo kit in the future. Well, I hopped out to the auto parts store so I could get this pulley installed. And this is kind of what this tool looks like. The way this works is you just screw this guy on here like this, so the bolt comes out this side, and this thing spins. So when you put this in here and thread this bolt inside the shaft on the steering pump, you just crank this down and it presses the pulley back on. Alright, that seems to be where it goes. And then we have to turn it the opposite way to get it back out. Like that. Also, I just picked up a new auto tensioner, which is designed for this fuel pump, which will replace this truck one, and it has the tensioner already installed, which it looks like it'll already fit perfectly with the other belts, which is what I was hoping for. I've got that guy, and then I have another idler pulley here. I think this is all I need to get my accessories figured out, so I'm going to get this stuff installed. That's awesome. That's awesome. Oops. So here's the new idler pulley that I just bought, and then we just pop a washer on here, put the spacer on, and then get the bolt back here lined up. How am I going to get to that? Oh, there we go. And then we have this top pulley that came with the truck accessory bracket, which goes just like that. This might sound silly, but to figure out the length of the belt that I need, I've decided to tape some string to the water pump, since it's a flat surface, and then I'm just going to run this string around the entire system here according to these instructions to figure out what my belt length will be, you know, which length of belt I need to buy for this. So that goes up there, down the crankshaft, and then up around the idler pulley, and over this guy, and then back down to the water pump again. And then we'll just measure how long this rope is. So the measurement ended up being about 80¼ inches, and I was told in the directions to subtract an inch because of the tensioner not being tensioned, which would be around 79¼ inches. And when we do some calculations here, or some converting, we're at 79 billion majillion, that's not right. That's better, inches, not kilometers. So we're at 79.25 inches, which is 2012, basically 2013 millimeters, and that's how long my belt needs to be. So I'm on the Gates belt website right now, and I need a 20mm top width, which is this column over here, and I need it to be 79¼ in circumference, which they have 79.5 and 79, so it's going to be one of these two. So I'm going to go to the auto parts store and see if I can find either a KD60785 or 790. Alright, I went and returned my tool that I used for the power steering pump and picked up a belt. They didn't have gate, but hopefully this will cross-reference correctly with the length. And we're about to find out here. Well, that's clearly too short, and I measured it exactly as I was supposed to, so I guess I gotta just make it a little bit longer. Alright, belt number 2, and this time it's a Gates. It's been sitting for a while. Oh, it's so close. Yeah. Now I have no idea if that's too tight, but it's definitely on there. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. Well, second time's the charm. The belt fits. This tensioner is really far over though. I thought it might go back a little bit more, but it's nice and, you know, it's tight without being like crazy tight. So I think we're in good shape here. Alright guys, we're making great progress. We have the intake on and bolted down, the front end with all the accessories are on, the belt is even on, so I'm really happy with this progress. Next episode will be the fuel system, so I have my factory LS2 fuel rail and injectors here, which will go on just like this. And then I'll also be having a fuel hose going to the back of the car, plus a new FPR and a fuel pump, so stay tuned for that. And as always, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please do like it and maybe subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying what you're seeing. It helps me a lot. So thanks again, I'll see you next time.